And now your host of Where's My Parachute? It's Steve Lemieux.
All right.
Nice.
Hey, welcome everybody.
What's going on, Steve?
I have Kent McCagg in the studio today, the founder of Order My Gear, and he took me serious on the wear a cool hat. So
I did.
He's showing his colors with Oklahoma State.
Go Pokes.
Yeah. So awesome helmet and
Thank
awesome
you.
hat, but I'm
All
gonna
right.
let you take it off now so that you can focus. Throw it up there.
I like that
Throw it
look.
up there on the yeah. There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
All right.
Matt Stoker.
Yes, sir.
Glad to have you.
Good to have you back in.
I'm glad to have myself back in with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Episode 10.
My wife actually finally listened to one of these, and she said that she liked my voice on the radio.
Oh, that's
She's very
always nice.
smoky.
Oh, very smoky? Was
Yeah.
that like a smoker
I
or
don't know.
just some other
I have no idea.
adjective that I'm not familiar with?
I'm just glad she didn't say it sucked. It's terrible.
At least you liked it, yeah.
Yes. And Sean Carson joins us today as well.
Yes, sir.
A newbie in town from
Pull
New
that mic a little
York.
closer. There you
Yeah,
go.
thanks for having me. I
So-
just started with you this week. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, so he's gonna talk like, hey, hey. So can't Order My Gear. So a great entrepreneur. I've heard about you through some of the people that have invested money with you, and then we got to meet, and just super excited to talk to you today. Clearly, we want
Excited to be here. Thanks.
we want to talk to the folks that are out there that are starting a business or thinking about it or need some help or whatever, and talk about kind of some of your story and how that worked out. And I know we talked a little bit before about kind of different stretches. You've got a 4-year-old and 7-year-old,
I do.
both boys.
4-year-old girl and 7-year-old boy.
So yeah,
one of each.
The girl is my oldest is 14 now. She just went into high school.
Oh,
and
man.
it's crazy stuff, but fun and exciting. So full-time dad and family guy, and also started the company. So tell us a little bit about the company, and then I love the reason why you pulled it together. It's just a great little story. So give us that one.
Yeah, so Order My Gears, an e-commerce platform that is a tool in the team sporting goods group apparel space. So a lot of times, anytime you've ordered a uniform for your kid or paid for it, it's a small group. Often the items that you're ordering are decorated, maybe to just the team or even the individual.
Right.
Collecting those order forms and payments are kind of a pain. And so we're a platform that allows the distributor, the brand, or the school to streamline, or the group to streamline that process. So displaying and managing the store, the orders, the reporting when it goes into fulfillment. And so we don't sell the product. We work with the people that do and the people that buy it.
Got it. So, for example, when my middle daughter was in soccer and we went to get her uniform and they wanted to collect the $40 or whatever, and there's a lady running around trying to collect everybody's $40, and
could have gone through Order My Gear.
The wrong uniform or whatever. They ordered too many, and so that's exactly that's the solution for that.
Yep. So my dad, when I was growing up, he sold sporting goods in Northwest Oklahoma.
Okay.
So primarily or exclusively to teams and groups. And so, this was, he started in the late 70s. So driving a van around full of samples and catalogs and calling on ADs and coaches and selling everything from a pole vaulting pit to uniforms to, T-shirts. And so he generally avoided the group order that was paid individually, because for him, he'd spend 10 times more time and effort on a $3,000 order working with parents and collecting, order forms and checks than he would on a $15,000 order, getting a PO straight from the school.
One check, yeah.
And so he generally avoided that, but on occasion, he had to do it. And so he was calling on a baseball team in Oklahoma, and it was a $13,000 order, but they all paid individually. And so it was a bunch of Punk City baseball, Nike stuff and batting gloves. And so he collected a bunch of order forms, kind of 4 inches thick with checks and cash stapled to it, and was going to tally it up. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. And so really just started as a side business. And then, we were fortunate enough, that was in kind of beginning of '08, and then towards the end of '08, we got a break and started working with a buying group that had companies, a group of companies across the country that were similar to the one that like my dad worked for. And so that's when I thought, okay, I think I may go for it. And then we've been tripping over ourselves ever since.
Yeah. So, so your break that you talk about, so that was a group that worked with a bunch of these individual groups or teams or whatever?
Yeah, well, they it was a group of distributors, and so in the team side, the brands it's a separate division with Under Armour or Nike. The team side's a separate division, so there's different SKUs, and to give you sort of perspective, Nike's a $35 billion company. Like their team side is like $600 million. So at the end of the day, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's all marketing, and so most of below. Your big colleges, you've got, a lot of youth sports, and Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, they don't go direct, so they're not going to put somebody in Northwest Oklahoma. They use a local mom and pop or a regional distributor or a national distributor to sell that product. And so that's where the model was. My dad worked for Larry Black Sporting Goods. He sold everything, Nike, Shutt football helmets, all of it. So he would go call on coaches and, order, from Nike or whoever. And so the group that we got connected with was a group of distributors that were independent. They would get together twice a year at a buying show and book all of their product with, Under Armour, Adidas, and, trade brands, apparel brands, equipment brands. And so we got connected with that group, and they were looking to solve the problem that we had kind of solved. And, they kind of gave us a shot. And that was in October of '08. And then in June of '09 is when they had their next show. And, we'd done decent enough with those first, 15, 19 companies that, we started growing from there. So.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, they wanted you just as bad as the coach wanted you, right? Because they're if they're distributing, they also have that issue of the coach calling and going, "Hey, I've got to send these back because I didn't get paid," or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever that case might be, just a mess, right?
Yeah. In 2008, school budgets were going down, and so people like my dad looked and thought, "Oh no, this is going to really hurt my business." And in reality, what happened is they turned the purchasing decision over to the parents. And the parents went crazy and bought a lot more. And so, so what you had kind of in that time was this sort of growing need to provide, apparel that was decorated or equipment that was bought as a group. But the schools weren't going to pay for it. And so there was demand there. People like my dad didn't totally realize how much parents wanted to buy.
Yeah.
And then once they had that opportunity, it sort of kind of created its own monster. And so,
yeah, that's interesting. That it went bigger, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, that's how we are as consumers, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like if you can get it through the school and it's just whatever, a pair of shorts and a tank top or whatever, great. But all of a sudden, if it's up to you and you get a catalog, you start buying.
Well, and if you have options, like when the coach is buying something. There's higher risk, right? Because there's 20 kids on the team, and he's not going to give the kids a bunch of options. When you collect all the orders and the money up front, then your risk goes down. A, you can put more product on there,
right?
And then B, you're not ordering that product, decorating that product until you already have the money. And so we had a customer, early on, they did $500,000 in paper order forms the year before us, and he estimated. He wrote off 35, 40 grand of like bad checks, going and not ever collecting. The coach got the money, but never, gave it to the sales rep.
Right.
And the next year, he did 700,000 through our platform, and didn't write off, wrote off less than $1,000 because he had all the money up front, and was able to order the product and deliver the product after he had collected that order info and that money.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a need, and it came out of trying to help your dad, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I was at a spot where I was trying to figure out something to do on the side with him because I knew he was going to be retiring, and he knew every coach in the state of Oklahoma, it seemed like. And was working for a web company and was like, man, Dad, you know every coach. We need to figure out something to do on the side when you retire. And originally he sold a lot of letter jackets. And so the first company was Order My Patches, which I'm surprised you haven't heard of that. No, I'm just kidding. But
I might have actually.
No, I guarantee you haven't heard of it.
Okay.
But, so started with that and then kind of saw a pain point and, kind of had the idea. And then he had another guy that he worked with that covered a really large school in Tulsa and had a big football order that he did that he said last year it took me, a month to organize, and it was a $60,000 order, and it was a nightmare, but I have to do it. It's a big account. And he's like, hey, are you going to, can you have that put together in a couple months? And I naively said, yeah, we'll figure it out. And so it kind of worked. And that was kind of where we thought, man, this might be actually a decent business.
So that was your jumping off point without the parachute, is saying, sure, I can get it done.
Yeah, there's probably April of 09 was really when I jumped off. My view up until, we had that break at the end of 08 was, this is a side business. And, when I realized, okay, here's this group of companies, we got 15 that are going to give us a shot. There's another 60 companies in the, in that group. I thought, man, if we can hit a home run with, these 12 to 15, like, we have something. And I had to kind of worked out a deal in, November, like right after that trade show. And, they were going to pay me a $25,000 check for a licensing fee for every company in the group. So I thought, okay, at least I got and I wasn't making a ton of money at the time, and so I thought I've got at least a 4 or 5 month window here where if I don't bring in another dime, like we can still survive. And so that was kind of my jumping off point. Was like, hey, well, there's been a couple, but that was the first main one where. Like, all right.
Super scary, man.
Yeah.
It's like you go to bed and you go, what did I just do? And your wife was she thought you were crazy, or
she was supportive.
Yeah.
I think I think I'd already kind of crashed and burned. When we first moved to Dallas, I moved down to sell financial services, and probably dove off a little quick. And that lasted 9 months and didn't go well, and got a job, worked for a guy for a little over, 2.5 years, and we were able to get our feet back under us. And, so I was a little more cautious this time. But she was supportive, and, we had enough traction, that I knew we had something. I didn't know, how big it was, or how big it could be, or whatever. But she was supportive. I think there was a window where I was a little delayed in the actual invoicing people.
Yeah.
So there was a window where she was like, hey, this is great. I'm glad things are going well, but when do people actually mail us checks? So I'm curious about that. So I was like, they will. Like, so I finally got around to invoicing, which was good for my marriage.
There you go. Good. Yeah, that's good stuff. So when you took that plunge in April of 09, right? You said. So were you the only employee of the company?
I was.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
doing
then
a little bit of everything.
And then what was your first hire?
So we actually had. I take that back. I had a co-founder who's now our COO.
Okay.
He was part-time. He had developed kind of the first version or two, and he was working. He was actually in college at the time. So he was working, maybe 10, 15 hours a week, and then I was doing everything else. And then later in 09, we had a freelance developer that sort of stepped in and picked up where he was leaving off. And then beginning of 10, I bought him out. We worked out a deal, and then
the freelance guy?
No, the co-founder.
Okay.
And then when we did a seed round at the beginning of 14, and I brought him back at that point.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I mean, it was pretty much me doing. He had built it. I was doing all the customer service and sales and
not invoicing.
And I was supposed to be doing accounting, but I wasn't doing much of accounting.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good stuff. So you're definitely a tech company. Would you consider yourself a software company?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bold, but I think we look at ourselves as like technology and service company. And
Right.
so there's not a whole lot of companies out there that do both well. So, at the heart, we want to be a software technology company. I think because of our business model, which is transaction based, so we charge a fee based on the volume total.
Okay.
There are things we actually
like a credit card almost, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
in addition to the credit card fee.
Yep.
And so, everything for us is about the volume. And so we have a service team that facilitates a lot of the administrative work, that somebody like my dad would have to do. And so we do a little bit of both, but I'd say at the heart, we're a technology company.
Yeah. And then, so in 14, when you did your seed round, how many employees did you have at that point?
We had 5 at the end of 13. And
Okay.
so we grew maybe to like 20
Okay.
at the end of 14.
Okay.
So
And how many how many team members do you have now?
we have about 85.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's pretty. So 3 years,
Yeah.
3 or 4 years, and you quadrupled or
Yeah.
more than that in employee count.
Mm-hmm.
And have revenues followed that same trend?
Yeah, we've been at, we've grown anywhere from 50 to 85% revenue wise.
That's huge.
So yeah, I mean it's weird to say that because it feels like we're tripping over ourselves, but every year we're learning something new and figuring out new opportunities, and so we've been fortunate to be in a market where there's a lot of people buy decorated apparel and a lot of people sell it, and so can continue to learn, but yeah, there's lots of opportunity in front of us, we think.
So you see that there's still tremendous amount of growth capabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't saturated that market. You still got there's still a lot of market share out there.
We think we think there's a lot of, there's a couple different verticals that were nice and cleanly divided,
Right.
10 years ago. You have your team vertical, promotional products, screen printing, so there's just, the water's gotten kind of muddy and there's a lot of overlap in the people that are out selling, customized apparel or gear to small groups. And so that's where, when we look at the market, this drives our private equity partner crazy, but we look at it from a participation top down as opposed to a bottom up, brands, distributor, that kind of thing. And so when you look at how many kids are playing youth sports, when you look at corporate apparel, like there's just a large market for people that want apparel that says I'm a part of this group, and people like that. So yeah, we feel like we're scratching the surface. We could be idiots and naive, but that's kind of how we look at it.
You could have been in 14 too.
Yeah, I mean, I am an idiot, but and I am naive, but hey,
aren't we all? Yes. Cool. So, I'm going to ask you embarrassing moments in your business career. But is there a key hire that, and not to offend any of the other team members that were all key hires, but was there one that you were super nervous about? You look, because I know, running my business, it's like I look at our revenue, I look at our expenses, and I'm like, man, I can't afford this person, but I really have a hole there, and I really need to fill it. And if I don't fill it, we can't get to that level. Were there any standouts on that on your end?
Yeah, I think probably the two that stand out, and some of it was like, the stage of where we were. We hired 2 years ago. We hired one of our first customers. So he's a sales rep like my dad. He was about my age, but he had been in that industry selling since college.
Yeah.
And it was it was a big hire from a financial standpoint. B, you're taking someone from a stable career like the one my dad did. He made good money, and he's working for a startup. And although I believe in what we're doing, it's overwhelming. It still is overwhelming to hire people and pay them. And sometimes when they move or they have kids, or even if they're single, like that's just you're now playing a role, a chapter role in their life.
Yeah,
and that's a daunting thing. But Ryan Winkus was, we worked it out, and he came on board 2 years ago, and it was our first, industry hire, and so that was it's worked out great.
Yeah.
And but that was definitely a big move. And then we just recently hired a guy named Matt Kaplan, who he was at Under Armour for 16 years. He was employee like 30 something, and when we hired him, he was the head of team for Under Armour, and we just kind of caught him at the right time, and we had some things going on that were exciting to him. And he moved his family, 4 kids, down here just in the last couple months. And if you'd have told me a year and a half ago that was going to happen, I would have laughed and thought, why does he want to work for us?
That's huge.
But it's been exciting, and he's done a great job. And it's fun it was really weird to be in a spot where people in the industry were inquiring about jobs we had,
right? Because
it always felt like, wait, we don't pay very much. Like, why?
Yeah.
but that was anyway. So those are 2 hires that kind of stick out.
That's cool. Your humility really comes out. I know. For me too, it's like talking about a chapter in their lives. It's a real deal, right? I mean, it's not. They are.
Yeah.
They are people, and they are part of the team. And like, I never say that so-and-so works for me. I always say,
I hate that.
I do too.
I
always say we work together, or we're,
Yep.
we're teammates or whatever. And that drives me crazy, because then you can just toss it aside, right?
And I hate when they say it, like, here's my boss.
I know.
Like,
I
do that. Don't do that.
Too.
You work with me.
You
That's
work
it.
with me, yeah.
That's all you gotta
Yeah,
say.
Steve and I work together, whatever. Yeah, but it's interesting because you are playing a chapter in their lives. And I've found that sometimes, and I'll get hit on the back of the head by HR people or whoever's helping me hire, but I'll be in an interview and start like talking them into not coming to work for us. Sometimes like man, you've got a really good job right now. Yeah. Like, and it sounds like you kind of do the same thing.
I did it this morning. We interviewed a girl that used to work for one of our customers, and it's not so much talking them out of it. It's like, look, we're not perfect. Like, there are great things about working at Order My Gear, and there are things that aren't so great. And we try and recognize and improve on the things that aren't so great. But like, I'd rather them know what they're getting into than feel like they showed up and like, what, this isn't what I thought.
Yeah. Well, it's like I mean, any smaller company or startup company or a company that's ramped up as quick as yours, you've got. I mean, the platform issue is always an issue, right? It's like, hey, where is the XYZ document? And you go, yeah, we don't have one of those, but you can go ahead and write it, and then we'll use it. Like just things that an institutional company, you just don't have to think about it. It's just there. Or you go to the HR manager, and they're going to have that information or whatever. But yeah, I do the same thing, and it's probably to my detriment. But I remember I was hiring this is 8 years ago probably now, and so the company was 6 years old. Never missed a payment on anything. We were doing fine. And I'm interviewing this assistant, and I said, but you do have to realize the risk. I mean, we might not be around tomorrow.
Yeah.
And she goes, thanks a lot, click.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? And I remember my wife was there with me when I was making that call. I happened to be at home at the time, and she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell people that.
I try and say those things face to face, so
right.
they at least maybe don't read between the lines. But no, I totally agree. And I think there's risk. There are traditional jobs that seem like there's no risk that actually have high risk.
Probably more risk than these.
Yeah, and then there are, and I think that the risk can be scary, but I think I want to make sure they understand the risks and they're willing to take them. And I think at the end of the day, for us, I've always said, I hope our employees, when they look back at Order My Gear, however long their chapter was, they felt like they worked with good people. They felt like they got paid a decent salary and had a good environment, and they felt like it was a stepping stone to some degree in their career. And I think that it's gotten easier a little bit as we've grown. But I think the reality is, we're going to try and be aggressive in growing, not like foolish. But if it all crumbled tomorrow, like, we could all go get pretty good jobs in this industry. Not that everyone would want to stay in the industry, but it's like we built some relationships, and we have options if. It's funny that I'm talking about that, but we have options if everything goes down.
I think you're okay. I want to cover a couple of different topics before we wrap up, and like I said, the time goes super quick.
It's been fun.
One is give me an embarrassing. You got any good embarrassing moments?
There's probably a lot of little ones. I think. I know the industry's old school, so like it is old coaches. It's when I started, most of the companies were still using a DOS-based accounting system, and it's just it's a highly relational, good old boy, sort of environment. And I've stayed faithful to my skinny jeans and Vans, sort of shtick, I guess.
Yeah,
and I flew out early on to a distributor out in Odessa, and anyway, got picked up in a 4-door dually, and did a presentation in their kitchen with the projector on the wall, and you'd have thought I was speaking Chinese. And we went to lunch, and it was literally, it was 8 of us, and they were all dually, Wrangler boot, just good old Odessa fellas, and it was a Mexican place, and it was one of those deals you walk in and the waitress was in a hurry saying, "What do you want to drink?" And he's like, 9 teas. You like tea? And I was like, "Yeah, I like tea." And then she's like, "What do you want to eat?" And they knew, the lady who owned the place and who was waiting on us. And he was like, 9 chile rellenos. You like chile relleno? And I was like, "Yeah." And I started eating it, and I was on fire. And I thought, I just buckled down. I was like, they're hazing me. Like the guys from Odessa want to haze the guy from Dallas, and that's totally fair. And I'm finishing this meal. And anyway, about halfway, about 5 bites in, he looked over at me and goes, "You gonna be all right?" and I was, by that time, I was really focused on, not being the guy from Dallas that can't finish spicy food. But anyway. There were 3 or 4 guys that actually didn't finish, but I finished.
Oh, good.
But I was sitting there. There was that 15-minute window. I was like, okay, this is a joke, and I can take it.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to fight through. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool stuff. Okay, so venture. So your first investors were in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And what did those investors look like?
So they were basically 4 angel investors that had sold a company in 2011 called eCarList, and they jumped on board, and we raised 560, and so they, they jumped on board and really helped out in those first couple years, and then we did a round in February of this year. With a group out of Philly called Susquehanna Growth Equity.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so that's the only 2 you did, the angel and then the and then this most recent round.
Yeah, we did a $100,000 round, or not round, but a friends and family thing. Really about a year before we did the accelerator. So the guy that I hired, Ryan, 2 years ago. I looked at hiring him in like 2011, and it was just too big a jump. Yeah. And so that's why I did it. And then he had a better option. I was getting cold feet and thought, this is too big a jump. And so we hit the pause, button, and then it came back around 2 years ago, or a little over that.
Yeah. Now. And so what's been and obviously no confidential information or whatever you're comfortable with, but so what's been like how for guys out there looking at venture, I know there's a lot of I get a lot of questions about that, like man, how do I just go find the money, and how do I, so with these guys, was it formal? You were kind of out looking and you got introduced? Was it somebody knew somebody and said, "Hey, talk to these guys," and they said, "Hey, we ought to look at that"? How'd that go down?
So we with the seed round, we did an accelerator called Venture Spur. Now it's called RevTech here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And so
Dave Matthews, he was on David was on last week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we did that at the end of 2013, and then I think it was November is when we sort of had pitch day, and so that's how I met the seed investors. And then we had won some awards and got on a few lists, and so we had talked to a decent amount of growth equity kind of VC firms in 2016 and 17, and so we hadn't started an official process, but was sort of building those relationships, and really no domino fell like I thought it would or hoped it would, but we were able to get a term sheet from Susquehanna at the end of July in 2017. So fortunately, we were looking for it the first time. The second time, it was sort of on our radar, but we weren't like in the process, looking.
So other than that 600 or 700 or whatever with the little raises, you guys were able to be profitable or break even from that point until this latest round.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate in the sense that, again, when I started, it was kind of a side. My thought was if I can get these plates spinning, maybe I can make 50 or 60 grand on the side.
Right.
And so we had revenue going into that accelerator. In 2013, we had 700 grand in revenue. And it was year-over-year growth was really good. From 08, it just started with really, really low.
Right, sure. Yeah.
And so, I think the best, and especially on the next round, like the best thing that we did was make money to get money.
Yeah.
The easiest time the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. And I think, I think in the seed round, it was good. It was really good that we had revenue. And, I felt like at the time, the other companies that were in the accelerator program, they didn't have revenue, but I thought they were bigger, like in some ways better ideas than what we were doing. So I felt like I was behind because I had revenue. And they had sort of leapfrogged me in sort of this fundraising process. And I think in reality, what ended up happening is having revenue really helped and help us get the seed round. And then especially from 14 to 17 when we got the term sheet, the fact that we were making money, didn't need money, we're profitable. Those numbers were heading in the right direction.
Sure.
And so, getting on a few of those lists allow them to call us and learn a little bit more about the business, and we were fortunate in the market at the time. There was, I think, a lot of capital and not a lot of companies in that in the range that we were in revenue wise.
Right.
And so there was a competitive landscape there a little bit, which caused them to kind of move quickly, and we got a term sheet quicker than we really were expecting.
Yeah, that's cool. So, and I know you cannot talk poorly about your private equity group. That just doesn't work. So, but I'm curious, as you were going through this process and talking to different firms and looking at partnering with people, what are some of the things that made you nervous, or that you would that people should avoid if they're if they get to that point where they're going with a private equity? Because you do hear horror stories, right? Where, hey, they came in, they fired the founder, they whatever else. But what are some of those key hot buttons that you kind of looked at and said, okay, we're going to stay away from these groups that do this, and we really need to kind of focus on other.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my first, I'm a big vibe guy, and so like the first criteria for me was like, do I like these people? Do I want to work for these people? Do I trust them? Like, is what they're saying lining up with, the bullet points in the deal and that kind of thing? I think you have to have a real, I think, there's plenty of people around town that can give it to you. You have to have a reasonable understanding of the role you played and the role you're going to play. The reality is, like, everything changes when you do the deal. Whether it's a $560,000 deal or whether it's a $35 million deal. And so I think, having a reasonable understanding that, they have drivers just like you have drivers, and you got to understand their drivers and be okay with the drivers they have.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it. Relationship was a big deal. So getting to know them, getting to know where they, what their fund looks like, what their exit strategy looks like, what are the other portfolio companies that they have, what's been their story, what do they say about the firm, those were all factors. We wanted to try I wanted to make sure that the DNA that we had was at least somewhat consistent with the DNA they had.
Yeah.
So we want to mature and grow. So like, I don't want to say like, do you think like us? But it's like, you know, as we mature as a company and as I mature as a leader, like, is that consistent with the DNA that they have?
Right.
And also, what are they bringing to the table? You know, like I felt like we needed a partner, and were they going to be a partner that helped us leverage the opportunity that was in front of us? And so, you know, that looks different ways, I think, with different groups. But you know, it's way more than just money. You know, it's and we didn't really even need the money, like I said, but we needed a partner. And having a partner in their perspective with some money allowed us to do some things, or is allowing us to do some things where we feel like we're trying to, you know, leverage the opportunity and take it to the next level.
That's good. That's good stuff, man. I mean, that's really quality advice and reflection. Last question.
Yeah.
Because we're wrapping up, but you mentioned DNA. So give me a little shot about your company culture. How do you guys? I mean, you're a tech company, so
Yeah.
is everybody in skinny jeans and Vans and reclining in the
Not everybody.
in the love sacks or whatever whatever they got?
We don't have love sacks,
There you go.
to my knowledge. But you know, we started. This is a highly relational industry, and so I'm a pretty relational guy, and so you know, we started really valuing, you know, people and valuing helping people and serving people, and everything was, you know, how can I help my dad save time and make more money? And so, you know, we've been really, really fortunate to get some great people over the years, and I think we have, you know, young group, fun group, a relational group, you know, and we're big enough now that it's fun to have a lot of diversity.
Right.
You know, I think that's been important to us, and so, you know, and different teams have sort of different, you know, subsets of kind of culture, but, you know, open office space, we've been pretty frugal for the most part the last 10 years. And so, you know, try to be scrappy and value the people that we work with or work for. And, like I said, we've got some great people, and they've really helped build our culture to where, you know, that chapter that people spend is a meaningful chapter, both relationally, career-wise, and, you know, what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah,
what a
you bet.
great conversation. I think you really were able to put out some good info for people that could help them out in different stages. So
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity.
yeah, and good luck continuing to grow. And man,
Thank you.
I hope you come back in here with 500 employees or 1,000 employees, or maybe 0 employees,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you've exited or whatever that case might be. But I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Good having you on.
Yeah, appreciate
Sean,
Yes,
good having
sir.
you on, man.
I got a question.
Okay,
actually, for you.
okay.
So from what I've seen down in Texas is youth sports are bigger than college sports in the Northeast. So do you ever see yourself expanding up there, or are you going to try to keep it regional?
So we have our distributors are across the country and in Canada as well, and so we at this point we probably won't move to like an outside sales model, but you never say never, you know. So we're up there a good amount, so and we have a lot of good distributors up there.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll at this point it's probably Dallas as the hub, and then, you know, we'll figure out if and when it makes sense to have other offices.
There you go.
It's overwhelming having one. I don't know. I don't know
No
that I'm
doubt.
man enough to have more
No
than one.
doubt, it is. Sean, good question. You brought a little bit of that Northeastern with you too,
Yeah.
the accent.
Had
so.
to.
All right,
Ain't
guys.
going nowhere.
Thanks again, Kent. Matt,
All right, thank you.
thanks, bud, for hosting.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.
All right, bud.